Hello interpreters, this is Mason the interpreter. Today's video is about the 5 most common mistakes that beginner interpreters make. I made this video because these are the mistakes I made when I first started out as an interpreter, and they are also mistakes I constantly see from other interpreters when I monitor their calls. So if you are a new interpreter, learn from this video so you don't have to make these same mistakes. And if you are an interpreter with years of experience, I suggest you still watch this video until the very end because there will be a part 2 that you will want to check out. If you're ready, let's get started. Here is mistake number 1, getting too nervous to the point that you are literally stuttering and stumbling. If you're new to this job or any job really, it's completely normal to be nervous because we often don't know exactly what we need to do. When you work as a remote interpreter, the very first thing you will say on a call is the opening statement or the opening disclaimer. You typically state your name, your interpreter ID number, and any other disclaimers you need to say. And if you have never done this before, don't worry. Your company, aka the LSP, language service provider, will give it to you before you start taking calls. So basically, all you need to do is just read it from the script. However, many new interpreters get so nervous that they start stuttering as they are reading this out. Like, hello, I'm Mason. I'm your translator. Oh, no, I mean, I'm your interpreter. This is definitely something we want to avoid. When it comes to interpreting, it typically gets worse. Many new interpreters will struggle with the delivery of their interpretation because there are so many things to process in your brain when you are interpreting. Then, what's the solution? How can we make ourselves less nervous so we stutter less? First is to relax. When I say relax, I'm talking about two things, your body and your mind. I remember how tense my body was when I took my first call, and when your body is physically tense, your brain doesn't function properly. Try shaking off your hands, stretching your arms, massaging your legs, or wiggling your toes, whatever works best for you. Now, for your mind, one trick to calm inner anxiety is to remind yourself that this is just a conversation. Yes, I know you're interpreting, and there are many things to think about, but at the end of the day, it's really just people having a conversation, so it should sound like that. Here is mistake number 2, not knowing the protocols and guidelines set by your LSP. If you are working as a remote interpreter, you will have to adhere to specific guidelines set by your LSP. These might include what to say in your opening statement, specific disclaimers, what actions to take when there are issues with the call, and how you should proceed when the client asks you to be on hold, etc. For example, let's say the doctor asks you to wait and they will come back in about 20 minutes. If you don't know exactly what you can or cannot do, you could possibly get in trouble for your actions. This can actually be confusing if you work for more than one LSP because one company might ask you to hold for a maximum of 10 minutes, while another might say 15 minutes. Some might even specify that you cannot hold for a particular client or that you should wait as long as the client asks in certain situations. The solution should be easy and straightforward for this one. Make sure you know your LSP's rules. Mistake number 3 is interpreting word for word instead of meaning for meaning. In my course, the MIPCP, I talk about how we should focus on meaning for meaning interpreting rather than word for word interpreting. It's surprising how many new interpreters jump on calls without clearly understanding this idea. Here's an example. When you talk to a customer service representative, you often hear them saying something like this. Hello, thank you for calling. With whom do I have the pleasure of speaking today? I've personally seen many interpreters struggle because they don't understand what kind of interpreting we do. This sentence, with whom do I have the pleasure of speaking today? What does it mean? It essentially just means, what is your name, right? Of course, it's phrased very politely, so I would suggest saying, may I have your name? Or could you tell me your name, please? As a good way to substitute this sentence. So when we are interpreting, we don't have to fret about translating every word. We can simply ask for their name politely in our language. If this is something you're still struggling with, I highly suggest you check out my lecture videos, which are all posted for free on my YouTube channel. Go check them out. Mistake number 4 is getting too involved. If you are new to this job, it's likely you are full of passion. Although you're nervous, you are focused and ready to start your new career. However, some calls can be seriously discouraging. Some calls might make you feel sad, depressed, or even traumatized in some cases. You might even hear hateful comments directed at you when you thought you were helping. If you start getting too involved, taking things personally, or even reacting negatively, it will leave you feeling extremely stressed and discouraged, and you will lose all the energy to move forward. If you're worried about this situation, or if you've been there personally, I have a reminder that I'd like to give you. It's just a conversation. Remember, being accountable and responsible for your work is important. I think we all should be because it's much better than being indifferent and not caring about your job. But if you are actively struggling because the last call you had was too sad, or the LEP or client was so rude that it's ruining your day, then I think there's got to be something we should do to feel that way a little less. Unfortunately, I don't have a perfect answer, but my personal solution is to let it go. I try to acknowledge that I had a bad call or a difficult person to deal with because, trust me, we sometimes do. I just try not to think about it and distract myself with other things, whether that's drinking water, having some snacks, talking with friends or family, petting your cat or dog, or taking another call. Lastly, mistake number 5 is being too scared of quality assurance calls. As I mentioned, I currently work as a quality assurance call reviewer at several LSPs, monitoring and evaluating other interpreters' calls. I feel like many QA call reviewers get a bad reputation among interpreters, and I understand why, as my calls also get monitored by other evaluators now and then, especially if you're new. The thought of someone listening to your call and evaluating your performance can definitely be nerve-wracking. However, I don't think we should be scared of making honest mistakes because really no one is perfect and everybody makes them. Don't get me wrong, catching misinterpretation is part of my job, but what I want to emphasize is that it's not the main purpose of quality assurance. I believe thoroughly understanding this will help you worry less about your calls being monitored. When I monitor calls, I check for things like accuracy, adherence to the LSP's protocols and guidelines, the interpreter's professionalism, and especially any suspicious or illegal activities. So I think it's fair to say that the main focus is to identify interpreters who are trying to abuse the system, not new interpreters who are doing their very best but still making occasional mistakes. Here is a quick summary of today's video. If you are a new interpreter, think about these mistakes carefully and see if my solutions help. If you have any other tips for interpreters to tackle these mistakes, please kindly share them in the comments. Now, if you believe you are already past this point in your career and feel like none of these mistakes I mentioned apply to you, please check out the next video, the 5 mistakes that expert interpreters make. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Interpreter disconnecting. Bye bye.